Tired
My name is Kara O'Neill, and I'm from Cranberry, Pennsylvania.
My name is Rick Molesky, and I'm from Franklin, Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Mary Sarr. I'm from Franklin, and Rick and I have just retired on June 30th after many, many years.
What did you do at Polk Center?
Well, I spent a lot of time, like 36 years, in direct care. And basically, direct care is what it says. You take care of the individual, you care for their safety, making sure that they are well taken care of, dressed, and give them a chance to do what they can, give them the opportunity to do what they can for themselves. So Polk Center is very big on independence, and they stress that all the time, and we, just about everybody, try to make that happen. So, and then I took a promotion back in 2013, which I was a residential service worker, and I worked up here to my last day, and I was kind of like the liaison between the cottage and the office. When they needed clothes, I made sure it happened. When they needed a special diet, I made sure that happened through way of the other team member, whether it be dietary. They needed money, I make phone calls to the guardian office. If they need clothes, I go out and shop for it. I make sure that they get their birthday parties in. I make sure that they go to camp at least once a year. Actually, I have a list in my office. Probably have like over 150 different responsibilities written out that we need to do. Of course, we don't do that every day, but it's basically, the big thing is too, I write programs up for them to achieve this level of independence. Could be what we call ADLs, or adaptive living program, like getting them to pick clothing for themselves, or getting them put the shoes on. Those are the real basic stuff. But then as they learn the program and they advance through the steps, they do better things like maybe even going out and shopping for their clothes. It depends on their ability to do that. But that's not the only thing. They stress the fact that we keep them well groomed. So there will be oral hygiene programs, there will be bathing programs, there will be dining programs, teach them good table manners. Just a variety of things. Finance program, that's the big one, where they learn how to use money at the Polk Center canteen. So there's different plans that we do, and with the help of the ID team, I don't think you want to get into who's on the members for the ID team, but we all come together in agreement. And usually, in my position, I have the most planned compared to the rest of the ID team. So I enjoyed that job. I enjoyed that much better than I would know how to say.
I started to work at Polk Center in the 1970s as summer help. Here's my picture with my attendance uniform on, and that's what we had to wear. And I worked there 2 summers, and then I worked in the school department as a special ed teacher associate because I had my degree in art. Then I left to go to VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America. And then when I came back, I went back to Clarion to get my master's degree in special education while all the time working at Polk Center. Polk was extremely generous in the things that they used to offer, and I took advantage of that, and that was wonderful. So then I worked in the school department until we changed, and we had the opportunity either to work for the Department of Public Education in the IU program, or go to stay in the Department of Public Welfare, which is where I had worked in the school department. But the school department closed because the people who were at Polk who were under 21 went to the Department of Education, and there was approximately 500 who started in that program in the late 1970s. That had to do with the right to education law. In the 1970s, there was an enormous amount of changes. We had the peonage changes in which the individuals had to stop working for nothing, and then they had to get paid. This cost the facility an enormous amount of money. and this is also when the time we had rights really being prominent, and this is the time that we had the start of the deinstitutionalization, in which people went from Polk and other facilities into the community. And this was pretty much similar to all across the United States. So then I worked in the unit program, and I worked there as a program specialist, in which I did pretty much the exact same thing that Rick did, just a different name. And then I also worked there as a qualified intellectual disability professional, in which I was a person who chaired the meetings and got coordinated with the ID team, and we made decisions. We had special meetings, and I worked with that job for about 25 years. And then my last job I was the manager, the unit manager at the Woodside building. So Rick and I have been there a long time.
Yeah. Wow. So, what did you love about your job? What were your favorite parts?
What do I love about my job? I tell you what, if I can make a person that lives there smile, it just makes my day. You know, I don't always succeed, but for generally the most part, whether I crack a joke or I comb their hair, and just that's my favorite part. And then another good part would be when we try to do something with that person and he remembers to do it, you know, in the future. Like maybe I won't see him because I work in different buildings. I won't see him for 5 years. And he did what I taught him to do 5 years ago, and he remembered to do it. And it's like, wow. And it could be a she, of course, whoever I work with. But that was definitely my favorite part. The side note, though, I'm working with the people who care for the individuals as much as I did. When I see them making other people smile, I say, okay, great, we're great.
And I agree with Rick. I agree. I think the reason that both of us stayed there is because we enjoy working with the people. We enjoy seeing them smile, be independent, making choices. And so, yeah, that was a great thing. And when I worked as the Q, my job was to make sure that things got done. And so you really got to meet the needs of the people there. And that was very rewarding, because some of our individuals could be very needy. And we got to do that. And then, of course, I enjoyed working on the history of the facility.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how did you get into working on the history of the facility?
Well, it's kind of a joke. I worked in the school department when I started there, and I worked as a special ed teacher associate because I only had a degree in art, elementary art K through 12. And I noticed that the other people who worked in the school department were special ed teachers. And they got $2,000 more a year than me. And I thought, I can do that. So I went back to college at Clarion to get my special ed degree. And at that time, when it was time to make a decision whether I was going to take more classes or do a thesis, I was a single mom with my son Jason, and I didn't want to be away from him that long, so I didn't want to go to take the extra classes, and that's why I did the thesis. I had suggested that I do a thesis on comparing Polk with another facility still in the western part of Pennsylvania. My advisor said, no, that was too much, and just do the history of Polk Center. And I did it, and it was finished up to be, when I was done, it was 450 pages long, in which 100 pages were personal interviews. And then when we started getting federal monies in the late 70s, early 80s, and each building kept being accredited for federal monies, they had to have an in-service for the new staff. And part of the in-service was, well, where have we been? So, Mary, you can just do some more in-services, and you can talk, and you can talk. Mary got tired of talking. So Mary did the DVDs. Well, before it was videos, and then DVDs, so that I would show the DVDs, and they would have some discussion. So I have continued to better, in my mind, my DVDs. Randy Batall from Keepsake Video helped me with this. And the purpose with this there's two of them. One is a little longer than the other because the other one has more personal interviews. But this is an objective view of how the institutions have changed over the 100 years. But like I said, this also includes how the institutions across the United States have changed. And a lot of this had to do with answering a lot of questions that I was given from my previous video.
So then can you tell me a bit about even how things have changed since you've been there? Like, I know you've mentioned some things, but...
I think the biggest change in my mind have seen is the different techniques that we to use and which have affected the numbers. The changes that we had was pretty much forced upon us, and again, it was in the 70s. I always, when I do my video, I talk about how in the 60s, it was a lot of those rubber-rousers and those hippies making a lot of, presenting a lot of questions. And so that kind of evolved into changes and people being activists and say, we want changes, we want changes. So in the 70s is where you see the changes, like I said, with the right to education law and the peonage law. And those were the two biggies for Polk Center. And that's how things evolved, changing. And then we were also had to, instead of wearing the uniforms, we then had to wear just clothes like he and I are wearing now. A couple things for reason for this. One is the union, and the union even has evolved over the time, said, if you want these uniforms, then you just go ahead and pay for them. And the Commonwealth one said, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And the second thing had to do with a book called Normalization. And that book had to do with the fact is that people, the direct care staff, are not authoritarians to the people who live there, but who are supporters of the process of helping these people evolve and learn to do more and be more independent. So then we went from just wearing regular clothes. So it was more, in quote, normal. And when it said normalization, it had to do with the fact is that the idea of, just like he said, Rick said, and he said it wonderfully, as the purpose of the direct care staff and the supporting people around it as to dealing with the people and promoting their independence. So that was a huge, huge change.
What had the staff's role been more before that? To kind of get an idea of how it changed, what had they done before?
Before they started the, well, basically there was like maybe 30 or 40 men living in one unit, one cottage, and you may have 3 staff. So basically, at least where I work, there wasn't choices. It's like, okay, this is what we're eating, we're all gonna eat it, basically saying whether you like it or not. Because we don't have the means of giving you alternative meal. This is the clothes that you're gonna have, whether you like it or not. There again,
the clothes, what he's talking about, an excellent example, Rick, is that Polk didn't have the money to do a lot of stuff. And so we would have a seamstress, a tailor shop, and we would get bolts of clothing. And all the women had the same A-line dress. It just, you might have like 5 different patterns. And you could tell who the people were from Polk Center because all the women wore white socks and bobby shoes, with the black and white shoes. And so again, that was, and then the men usually wore a lot of hobby pants, which was the elastic pants, or they would wear regular pants. And then we started getting clothes that the Jamesway had extra, didn't want. So we had a pick and choose. We had a clothing store, and people would give us donations, like the Salvation Army. And then again, when we started having these changes and we got into getting federal money, the federal money allowed us to give each person the $200, just like Rick talked about. You know, the individual, could make a choice as to what you want, and Rick would go into town to buy it. So you see differences in a variety of parts of their life. And when Rick talks about eating, you know, we have alternative foods. The dietitian will come, and the dietitian and the doctor will talk about what texture you can have. They would give the individuals barium swallows with the speech and hearing person. The dietitian was there, and the doctor's involved. And so they talk about different textures and different food preferences. So we get into more of what the individual likes, more independence, more individualization of that person, opposed, just like Rick talked about, the group thing.
Can you tell me more about the memorabilia room? You said you...
Oh, the memorabilia room.
How did that come about?
Well, two of my buddies, Roy Briggs, he was the head of volunteer, and Shirley Umstead, she was in charge of the Central Records. Oh no, she was a worker at Central Records. In 1987, Carolee Mitchner and Dennis Armstrong did the book on the 90-year history of Polk Center. Did an excellent, excellent job, and I sure wish it was still in print. And so we had a presentation at the facility for that, because many people thought, we'll never make it to 100 years, we better celebrate the 90th year. And that's what we did. And so Shirley, Roy, and I had a room with artifacts. And then they said, after the ceremony, they said, well, just pack them up, we don't really need to do this anymore. So we packed them up, then we put them into another room, and then we changed it to another room, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And it got bigger because people kept giving us things, just delightful things that they would find. They might find, the carpenter shop might find some old braces and crutches from the 1970s in which the young children wore, when some of them may have had polio. And one of the young people who came to visit the memorabilia room, it was a young person, like second or third grade, the child looked at these braces and goes, why, that looks just like Forrest Gump. I said, well, yeah, it's probably the similar braces. So we just got bigger and bigger. And then Roy and Shirley retired. We put them all in sequence. I had the people who were there that had time on their hands, and they could do it. So we just got things going. And you could see us, there's lots and lots of pictures, lots of things that the individuals made, different clothing. Here is the award we got from participating in the polio vaccine in 1952. Here's another reward that we got from VOTEC when we had the people participate in the VOTEC program in the evenings. So there's lots of different pictures. Here's an old testing device. Just lots and lots. Some of these books are over 100 years old. In addition, I also, with Bob Bowles and Joanne Woody, made a video on our leaky boot fountain. And we have a leaky boot fountain in our courtyard. And then I found out there was a few other leaky boots in the United States. And so we did a short video, and we got pictures. I got pictures from different places in America that had the same statue.
Wow.
So I think you have a room, you do have a room just dedicated
Yes.
to the artifacts.
Yes, I do. And it's delightful, just delightful.
Wow. So
A lot of people like to come and look at it.
that's out at Polk Center?
Yes, it's at Polk Center. And again, I'll go back to that young person. Again, these young children were, like I said, they were elementary school. And they came to a rotary phone. And the one boy said, what is this? I said, well, it's a phone. He said, well, it's sitting on the table. I said, yes, it is. He said, well, how do you make phone calls? So I picked it up, and I dialed the numbers. He was fascinated, so he decided to dial all the numbers.
That's great. Yeah. So what are you thinking of doing now that you've both retired? Like, now you've got all this time on your hands.
Well, I never retired before, so it's certainly putting some thought in. My daughter will get married next weekend, so I'm able to dedicate some time. The only daughter, but I have, she's one of two children, my son and my daughter. But this is her first marriage. I mean, doing this. Then after that, my son had a job at Nike in Oregon, so we're going to go out and visit him for a couple of weeks, sometime in August. So that should take me up to about Labor Day, and Labor Day, I really don't know. You know, it's just something different that I haven't done for 41 years, and I'm for sure talking to different people, they say they don't know how they were able to work when they have no time after they when they're retired. Okay, you say so, I'll find out. But so basically in the short term, go to my daughter, be at my daughter's wedding, give her away, and go see my son in Oregon. And long term, that's a tough one right now. So
So you're doing something new.
yeah, do something new. I mean, I used to fish. Maybe I take up fishing. I've been walking a lot now since I retired, and I'll still keep up my. I'm a basketball referee. I'm gonna still do that for another year, and kind of pride myself in that because I'm 66 years old and I'm still running up and down the court with the 7th and 8th graders, and I'm keeping up with them. And my funny joke is when there's timeouts, they get to sit down on the bench and catch the breath, and not me. I got to stay on the floor. So I pride myself in staying in shape for that.
That's great. Where are you a referee at?
Different local high schools in the area here. You know, whether it be Franklin or City, Titusville, and stuff like that. When I go, probably they'll send me to East Forest, West Forest, but that's not too often. Just stay pretty much in the county. Cranberry for sure.
For me, I'm going to do what Rick is talking about, and that's family time. That's spending my time with my son and my grandson, and my daughter who just joined the Marines, and the rest of my family. But in addition, I like to perspective, and since I like to share the perspective of people who've actually been there.
Okay, so you mentioned the ups and downs. Can you tell me more about what are ups and downs like?
I would call ups and downs like changes, going from the individuals not getting paid, and then we have the peonage law, and the individuals having to adjust to going through the vocational program. Changes of developing their own skills, like Rick was talking about with different ADLs. I mean, this is an adjustment for some of the individuals who've not been used to that. So yes, we've had our challenges, and we've met them.
And one of the other ups is that we try to get them off ground much more than we used to. You know, when we go shopping, we take them shopping with us. We try to go out on picnics. We'll go to movie theaters, just like anybody else would do. We encourage it, and the community accepts them too. They enjoy having them, and it's kind of nice to see people smile, like the waitresses when we walk in with them. Say, hey, cool. You know, I've always thought they were smiling. I don't know what they're doing, but we stress that so much to try to get them outside, more involved. In fact, and this is really not my department, but there's some individuals that actually work in the community, not necessarily at Polk. Used to be they work at Dairy Queen or at the
different churches, the places in town. They would wash their windows, and they would have a vocational person go out and try to find jobs for Miller Equipment. Well, it used to be Miller Equipment.
Yeah.
Now it's a different name, and they would do piecework there.
So we kind of incorporate, and that's definitely a big up there.
And when he talks about going into town, that's a state initiative. They came from Harrisburg. An initiative for all the state facilities, I imagine for the group homes too, is that we have to get the person off grounds at least once a month. So we have a tracking system to make sure we do. And just like Rick said, the community is much more inviting, accepting, interacting more with the people that we go off with in the community. So it's been a growing experience.
So back in the 70s, there might have been a stigma, you know, I don't think they understand, or maybe it's contagious for their concern. But we came a long way through education and more acceptance and public relations, stuff like that. So that really worked out well. That is the major big up, I have to say.
And it goes back to approaches, like I mentioned in the front. Approaches.
Okay, so are your approaches more like education, or like what like you mentioned so many different things. I'm trying to.
Well, we have
what
a
are-
lot. We have a lot of in training, mandatory sometime in training on how to handle this situation here, how to work on the computer and get this program to come up. Like Rick said, there is a lot of training, just for like for the different groups. Like if you work in the cottage, you might have training in this and this. If you work in this office, you might have training in that and that. And then there's training for everybody. Like everybody has CPR. You just have to have that to work there. Mm-hmm. So there's different kind of training, and speaking to people in the community, having people come to Polk and seeing what it's all about.
Okay.
One thing though, I see a problem. People don't seem to want to stay at Polk Center. There's a lot of turnover. Like we're constantly hiring direct care aid, RSAs. I'm not too sure why that's happening. Maybe because a lot of people don't understand how to get hired.
Well, I also see, when I drive around, I see a lot of places in Venango County and other counties hiring. So I think that we are part of the American procedure. We see a lot of hiring in different places, including Polk Center.
Okay.
But you know, the Commonwealth treated me well. I never was laid off a day. I was able to put food on the table. I was provided very well. You know, I always recommend somebody come out to work at Polk Center. It's so rewarding. But I understand too, not everybody can do that. It takes a special person to work at a special place like that.
So then how devastating would it be if Polk would like close or something like it's...
Whoa.
That question really is usually answered by Harrisburg.
Okay.
Harrisburg has a communications specialist, I don't know what their title is, and they discuss the big things like that, because he and I would have a perspective of the employee, but the Commonwealth gives those approved responses to those kind of questions.
Oh, okay. I was not trying to ask you a trap question in any way. With
No,
that.
but I know that if Polk Center were to close, it would have been far-reaching. I mean, there's so many people depend on Polk Center, not just the employees, but you would have Walmart. I'm not saying Walmart will go out of business, but we take the individuals out for the clothing and the birthdays and Christmas gifts and all that. And I shouldn't just say Walmart only, because we used to go to JCPenney and we used to go to Kmart, but those places are shutting down. But now it all seems like Walmart. But we went to Bonton and all that. But we pump a lot of money into their system, and therefore they could feed their families and their employees. So if Polk Center were to shut down, I feel it would be a devastating effect to the county, because a lot of people rely on it.
It would have a rippling effect.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay.
And the 41 years I've there, I won't say I was under constant threat of Polk Center shut down, but they will sometime, it will come up, and it'll be just like so disheartening. And you gotta go home and say, okay, if they shut down, what do I do then? Sell my house, go look for another job. Problem is, everybody will be selling their houses, and you won't have much of a market for houses then. But
and I think that's the same thing that happened with the big businesses here in Oil City. I mean, they closed their places.
The Quaker State.
Yes, and again, there was a rippling
Joy.
effect, and the present day Oil City is a result of that evolution.
And it was funny because there was an article in the paper a couple of weeks ago about people retiring from VNA, and they had 3 ladies doing 8 decades. And I'm thinking, Mary and I got 8 decades between us too. I said, well, I never thought I would be a Polk Center. Who really wanted to go work in a place like that when there were better money made elsewhere? But the good Lord put me there for some reason, and 41 years later, I thank Him for every day I had, that's for sure.
I've had a lot of good years there too. A lot of the individuals have been just delightful. Some of them have their challenges that we have to meet. And the staff, there's been a wonderful number of good people. And And that's why the individuals get good care, is because we have dedicated staff who are willing to make sure that the individuals are properly cared for.
And the campus itself is beautiful. I mean, when we worked there, all the buildings were open. Yes, they have been shut down because the population is closed. One time we had, what, 2,000?
No, when the highest number there was at 3,500 in the mid-1950s. And when I started in 1970, there were 3,000. So
3,000.
there was.
And today, I think we have 196.
Yes, that is correct.
196. It's a big drop in 41 years. But the plus side is we can dedicate more time to them. Instead of 3 people working with 40 individuals, or whatever we call them, you know, consumers, whatever. Now we got 3 people working with 12, 15, depending.
When there were big open areas like that, when Rick would talk about, you'd have like the large dormitories. Over at Sunnyside, they opened up for 100 men per ward, and there were 3 staff. But the better capable individuals would help out. And again, in the peonage, that changed it. And the ratio where Rick is talking about has to do with our federal monies. The federal government gives us lots of regulations as to what we do. And one of the regulations has to do with number of staff we are allowed to take care of. It's like,
Well, thank you both so much then.
Thank you so much.
and thank you for having us. We appreciate
And
it.